We're going to look at the top 10 comic book sales on eBay for the month of July. Some surprises, including a head-scratching number one, up next on this video from Bronzeville Comics. Hey there, comic book community. This is Jim from Bronzeville Comics coming to you with another video. Before we get started, please like, comment, subscribe, do all that stuff that helps the algorithm. If you enjoy the content that I've been producing, I really appreciate it. You can follow us on the other socials, Bronzeville_comics on Instagram, the same thing on Whatnot. We do Whatnot sales Monday nights at 10 p.m. Eastern Time, and I've already scheduled my Bronze Horror Show. It's going to be Monday, October 30th. So that's already on Whatnot. You can bookmark that show. We're going to have tons of Bronze Horror. I actually found a short box recently that I have to go through that's nothing but pretty much DC and Marvel Bronze Age horror. Mostly like the anthology titles. So I'll be digging through for the next couple of months trying to add to that show. If you have not yet signed on to Whatnot, you can. There is a link in the description of this video. We'll get you $10. It's $10 off your first purchase. Doesn't have to be with me. And also in the description is a link to my eBay store as well as my email. And check out the eBay store if you're into like Monster High dolls. I have some Barbies. I got tons of trade paperbacks, graphic novels, and more coming. So we're kind of expanding as we're trying to get stuff that the kids no longer play with out of the house. So anyway, let's talk about the top 10 eBay sales for the month of July. And I know in the past that we've spoken about sales that showed up on eBay. Now, eBay does a little bit something different than what they used to when you look through the sold listings. It used to be that if it was a best offer accepted, the price, the buy it now price, would have a horizontal line through it, but you wouldn't know what that price was. And I've tried different resources to find out what the actual sold prices were. There's a website that I used, 130point.com. And you can actually, what I just did is cut and paste the description of the eBay listing into that site, and it says how much it went for. I'm not sure how accurate it is, but that's what I'm going by. And we're going to talk about that. All of these, there was not a single one of these top 10 eBay sales that was the conclusion of an auction. There were 4 books in which the buyer paid the asking price, and there were 6 in which a lower best offer was accepted. There's one that's a little bit of a gray area there, and we'll talk about that when we get to it. But one of the things that's interesting about this list is that it's 8 Marvel books, a Harvey, and a Charlton. So a couple of surprises, but we'll get into it. We'll start off with number 10 on the list, and that is a copy of Journey into Mystery 85 and a CGC 8.5. And this, of course, is the first appearance of Loki. This may have been propelled by the trailers that have recently been dropping for the Loki series that will be season 2 that'll be coming to Disney Plus in October. Loki's been a popular character since his introduction into the MCU, and it seems as though that popularity has sustained pretty well. For a villain, he's, I guess, probably certainly in the top 5 most popular Marvel villains. I would say, and it's because the MCU has, I think, largely has depicted him as an anti-hero. And Tom Hiddleston's performance has been so great. Anyway, this particular one was a buy it now, and the buyer paid full price of $18,999.99. There hasn't been a sale since 2018. So we're going to talk about this as $19,000. In 2018, there was a sale for $5,019 in a CGC 8.5. And in 2017, interestingly, a sale for more than double that of $10,700. this was a robust sale, and the last 8.5, which in surrounding grades was the best, probably comp. There was an 8.0 sold in June for $13,200. Obviously, this is the third appearance of Thor, a very early Marvel Silver Age book, hard to get in a grade as high as 8.5, so that $19,000 premium. I think that was a strong sale, and I'm sure that the seller was happy with that sale. Let's move to number 9. And this is a book that's going to appear twice on the list, so I'll really talk about the particulars the next time we look at it. It was a best offer accepted for an Incredible Hulk 181 CGC 9.6, the first full and cover appearance of Wolverine, the most valuable appearance of Wolverine. It was from Canada, so there is a conversion factor, and it seems as though the best offer accepted was really close to the US dollar rate based on the Canadian asking. It went for $21,903. Now, we'll circle back to Hulk 181 in just a couple of minutes. Let's move to number 8, and this was not a comic book, but an original art piece. And it did list under the eBay comic book sales. I could have not included it, but I thought it was kind of interesting, and I'll show you the scan of the full piece as it was shown in the listing. It is a Jim Starlin piece of original art that was listed for $30,000, and a best offer was accepted for $22,000. No real comps on this. I am not an original art expert, and I have a couple of friends who've recently gotten into the original art side of collecting. It's so tempting, but it's such a rabbit hole to go down. There's so many different rabbit holes of collecting one can go down. I've kind of stayed away. I do have a couple of art pieces that I picked up. I've been trying to get some original art from Justice League of America 102. I have some, I think, proof copies. So that can sate my desire for the original art right now. What was interesting about this, I felt, was that the shipping was $500. Obviously, a lot more difficult to ship an original art piece and maintain the condition, because I'm not exactly sure how big they are. I think they're even bigger than 11 by 17. So, and you want to obviously ship it flat and ship it safe. So, it was $500. But let's move on to number 7, which is another comic book and another copy of Incredible Hulk 181, also in a CGC 9.6. So 2 9.6 sales, both in the same ballpark. This was a little bit higher. This was a full asking price sale of a buy it now of $23,499. This one was a white pager, and both of these are up from recent comps of 9.6s. The most recent, there were 2 sales in June of a 9.6 Incredible Hulk 181, one for $17,500 and one for $21,000 even. And then the 2 previous sales to that were 18.6 and 18,975. So we're upwards of $2,500 on this book, which is, more than 10% increase in value. I don't know if that will hold. I don't know. I mean, it's hard to see, for me to see $20,000 plus paid for someone just excited about seeing Hugh Jackman in the costume. That might have built into it. Maybe people who've been speculating on the character feel that will generate more interest. But be it as it may, that is the Hulk 181. So both of these sales north of $21,000, and that is a healthy sale for that book based on recent comps. Let's talk about number 6, Strange Tales 110, first appearance of Doctor Strange in a CGC 8.5, similar to the Loki. They both came out around the same time. They're both CGC 8.5s. And this one, full asking price, buy it now, $25,000. The last sale was way back in June of 2020. No, oh, not sorry. I'm sorry. The last sale was in June for $21,600. So we're up $3,400 from that. And there's been no real movement about Doctor Strange. He's going to be coming back, but there hasn't been any announcements that would be a catalyst to get collectors excited. For comparison's sake, in March, a 9.0 sold for $24,000. So here you have an 8.5 selling for $1,000 more than the 9.0 had sold for. And it could just be the rarity of these books or the scarcity. I'm not sure. I think rarity of these books in this high a grade makes collectors who have that kind of income available to them just to kind of say, you know, what the heck? Let me get that book. So I think that's a strong sale. Up $3,400 from June and up $1,000 from the March sale, a grade point higher. So interestingly, most of the sales have been strong. Let's look next at number 5, X-Men number 1, CGC 8.0, off-white to white pages. It was listed for $35,000. A best offer was accepted of $26,000. The last, so a $26,000 sale, but this is down quite a bit. This was a pretty good bargain. The last sale in grade was in December for $43,476. So that's $17,000 less than in December. Granted, December of 2022, kind of the tail end of the comic boom. More recent sales, a 7.0 sold in June for $25,200. So a pretty good deal. Getting it for $26,000, only $800 more than a full grade point lower. And a 7.0 in April sold for $32,400. So this looks like it's a good deal for the buyer. I think the $35,000 was a fairly reasonable. Again, I'm not spending $35,000 right now on a comic book, and I'm talking about it being reasonable. A fairly reasonable price for this book based on recent sales, but maybe the seller got an offer and they were just looking to move the book. So I think I think that was a good buy. Number 4 on the list, and here's where things get interesting. Charlton, a Charlton Silver Age book. But it's connected slightly to a character that we're going to see on screen in a week. But kind of slightly. And it's a copy of Blue Beetle number 1 in a CGC 9.8. It's the 1964 version of Blue Beetle, which is the first appearance of Blue Beetle in the Silver Age. It's still the Golden Age Blue Beetle, Dan Garrett. It's not the Silver Age Ted Kord Blue Beetle, who is more well known to modern collectors. His first appearance in Captain Atom 83 in 1966. So this is 2 years prior to that. There is a connection in the Charlton stories between Dan Garrett and Ted Kord, and then that connection continues to Jaime Reyes, who would come around 40 years after Ted Kord in DC Comics. Now, all of these characters were acquired by DC in the mid-1980s and debuted. Well, Dan Garrett didn't, but Ted Kord debuted in Crisis on Infinite Earths. 9.8. It's the only one on the census. And I didn't tell you how much it sold for. It was a best offer accepted. It was listed for $30,000. The best offer accepted was $26,500. There's only one 9.8. This is the only one. No previous recorded sales of it. A 9.6, by comparison, sold in June, so just a month earlier, for $6,600. So we're talking about quadruple from a 9.6 to a 9.8. And maybe that makes sense because the 9.8 is unique. It's the only one on the census. A 9.8, I'm going to show you the scan of the book that was in the listing. A 9.8 of a book from 1964. To me, it's not an enormous key. I think the first appearances of the other Charlton heroes are bigger keys, of Captain Atom, Blue Beetle, Question, etc. So I think this was a good sale. Guy was asking $30,000. took 3,500 off to get 26,500. Especially if this is the person that submitted a high grade copy, probably made a pretty handsome profit on it because nobody's been, trying to pick up copies of Blue Beetle #1, at these prices. Let's move on to number 3 in much more familiar territory. Amazing Fantasy 15, the first appearance of Spider-Man in a CGC 3.5. It was listed for $38,000. A best offer was accepted for $35,000. So now we're Amazing Fantasy. This is now we're talking exactly $10,000 a grade point. 3.5 selling for $35,000. It's in line. The last sale was in June for $36,000, and prior to that there was a heritage auction. No, I'm sorry. After that, there was a heritage auction which culminated on August 1st for $38,400. So in that ballpark, right? $35,000. So if you're thinking about Amazing Fantasy 15 right now, you got to figure maybe about $10,000 a grade point. And so I think this was we're kind of reasonable in terms of the sale price. Not a great deal or not a really high sale. Now we're going to go to a Harvey book. No, it's not Richie Rich or Casper or Wendy or who's that other guy? Who's the other ghost? They had other ghosts. They had right, Casper and Wendy and Baby Huey. All those. No, it's not Harvey. We're going back to 1954 Harvey, pre-code horror. Number 2 on the list, Chamber of Chills, number 23 from 1954 in a CGC 9.0 old label. That first generation of CGC labels. It was listed for $40,000. A best offer was accepted of $35,500. This Al Avison cover of the skeleton trying to make out with the woman who doesn't really appear too interested in his advances. There are 4 9.0s on the census and just 2 higher, 2 9.2s. No recorded sales from the 9.2s. A 9.0 sold in November for $27,600. So this is up $7,900 from that sale. So that is pretty heavy. Interestingly, there was a heritage auction sale of a CGC 9.0 back in 2008, 15 years ago, granted, back in 2008 for $392. It has increased. How much is that? It's almost 100-fold. Let me do the quick math. That's math I can't accurately. $392. That is a 90.5% times the value. Over 15 years, but still. Which goes to show you that I think pre-code horror has been really strong through the comic boom, and it is kind of I think an avenue that more collectors have started to move into. They've always been very passionate collectors of pre-code horror, but as there are more collectors, then they discover more books rather than maybe the handful of a couple of dozen or a few dozen books that have always been popular, and they kind of look for more similar types of books. And this is one of them. Skull covers are very popular. And, going, from $392 to $35,500 in 15 years. That is pretty good return on your investment if you were able to score that for $392. And that's a heritage auction. So it was not something that went under the radar. Let's move on to number 1. And this is an absolute positive head scratcher. I don't understand it. And because of that, one has to call into question the validity of it. I have no evidence that it's an invalid sale, but it looks odd. Let's put it that way. Well, let's talk about what the book is. It's Ultimate Spider-Man #1, the first solo book of Miles Morales. CGC 9.8 signature series by Stan Lee. and it is numbered 91 out of 100, that sold for $49,999. $50,000 for a 9.8 Ultimate Spider-Man 1, not a variant cover, signed by Stan Lee. There are 99 more out there of this brand. Stan Lee signed other stuff. Now, I wasn't able to find many Stan Lee signatures that had been sold when I went to Cover Price. To Go Collect. Stan Lee did sign a book that was also signed by others in 2020 for $2,850. This one sold for $50,000. And there was another sale prior to that of a Stan Lee signature for $325. Miles is popular, but not as popular as he was at the height of his popularity during the boom in terms of the prices of Ultimate Fallout 4, for instance, just using that as a frequently sold barometer. Stan Lee signatures are sought after. We're not getting any more of them, but there are Stan Lee signatures around. And maybe this, because there were only 100 in this particular signing, it's signed on the cover, 91/100, right? 91 out of 100 that was signed by Stan Lee. But $50,000? And it's not even Ultimate Fallout 4, right? I find it hard to imagine other Stan Lee signature books getting this much of a premium bump. Let's just, I didn't even look at the comps for the regular Blue Label. Ultimate Comics Spider-Man, I should say. The 9.8 had a most recent sale of $750. $750. The Stan Lee signature sold for $50,000. And on the census, there are 53 9.8s on the census, a signature series. Certainly not all of them signed by Stan Lee. Probably just a fraction of that. So could that scarcity of that particular combination, Ultimate Comics Spider-Man 1 and 9.8, Stan Lee signature, it boggles the mind to think that it would just drive the price up to that degree. And after all that, I went and looked. The number one sale, that book, is up for sale again by the original seller. So evidently, whoever bought it never paid for it. And that's often what happens in these cases, where somebody will buy something for an outrageous amount. Now, listing this at $50,000 is kind of crazy because it doesn't match up with any previous data as to what the book is worth, despite the fact that there aren't many of them out there that have been signed by Stan Lee in a 9.8. But it's up again for the same exact asking price of $49,999.99, or essentially $50,000. So if you're interested in buying the book, you can go ahead and do that. So that's the top 10 list for eBay for July. Let me know what you think about it. Let me know what you think about that Ultimate Comics Spider-Man. I can't think of another example where a Stan Lee signature is worth that much, right? Because basically you're saying that the Stan Lee signature is worth over $49,000. Interesting sale. I mean, and I looked, the seller is a well-known, well-regarded seller. 100% feedback rating. I'm not sure what to make of it, but that's what we have. Let me know what you think in the comments below. All right. Another fun eBay looking. And of course, most of us will never be able to afford any of these books. So this is Jim. This is Jim. I can take a look at a couple of my other videos here. And this is Jim saying until next time, enjoy your comics.